If we are doing horror stories, I have one from my childhood of a character I've come to call Shadow Man. I was around 8 years old and my little brother was 5 or 6. We sometimes slept in the same bed and for some reason I couldn't sleep that one night. The light was on in the hallway, but the room was furthest from the light so it was dimly letting light into the room. The reason for the light was because my little brother was scared of the dark. I never understood his fear of the dark at that time, but after that night I had a reason to be afraid, or at least afraid of leaving the door to my room opened. It was well past midnight. I remember the red numbers glowing on the clock as they read out that it was around 1 in the morning. That's when a sense of dread filled me. I didn't know what it was or why I felt that way. Something told me to protect my brother as I held him. I was shaking slightly as I hid him under the covers, grateful that he was asleep. Then I heard not footsteps but the sound of someone's nails scraping at the walls in the hallway, along with the sound of something dripping on the floor. I thought that maybe it was my mother, but it was more like I was hoping it was my mother. I was not so lucky as a shadow stood at the door as it squeaked open completely. There was the silhouette of a figure I've never seen before. He was well over 6 foot, maybe nearly 7, as his head was just short of reaching the height of the door frame, and he was lean. For one reason or another, no light touched him, and I swore he was smiling at me. Not just any smile, but a smile that sent a chill down my spine as I stared at him petrified. I could practically feel a killing intent in his invisible gaze, and I knew that we were staring at each other eye to eye. I felt if I took my eyes off him even for a moment or made a sound, he wouldn't just hurt me, but my little brother as well. I was forced to stare at this person that the light in the hallway refused to touch him, like it too was afraid of the person standing at threshold of my room too. I stared point blank long enough to recognize what type of clothing he was wearing. Trembling, I noticed it looked like something a working man would wear. Loose jeans, working boots, and an open flannel shirt with likely just a shirt underneath. I could recognize the shape of it all. My grip on my brother steadily tightened out of fear and needing to protect him. I didn't know how long we stared at each other, but I must have gripped my brother too tightly and he stirred enough for me to check on him, and I broke eye contact, but quickly looked back realizing what I had done. But he was gone. The shadowy figure was gone. The clock read that it was around 3 in the morning. Relief flooded me almost the moment I realized the figure was gone. Exhausted and thinking it was my mind playing tricks on me, I fell asleep. Only 3 or 4 hours passed, and the light was switched on with my mother freaked out. She hastily shook us away. When seeing we were fine, she hugged us both sobbing. I was not yet awake and was understandably confused. She told us to stay in the room until she said otherwise. I didn't know why, and asked if Mother had seen the Shadow Man. She looked stunned as she asked me to tell her what I meant. She was shaken after I described what I had seen that night. She held us even tighter in her arms and told us not to leave the room, and I felt like she didn't want to leave either. The reason she told us to stay in the room was because of the dripping sound I had heard the night before. There was blood on the wall, floor, and back door. Apparently, the neighbor's dog had been killed that night and our back door had been left unlocked. The person I had seen that night was the person who had done the deed, and who knows what would have happened if I had not seen him or if I had screamed that night. All I know is that I'm lucky to be alive and the Shadow Man was never caught and I never left my door open again.